So currently under twos is 1 to 3. So that means for every 3 babies, there's one staff member accountable for them. Twos and above is 1 to 4. And then when you hit 3, that is 1 to 8. Anybody with QTS, which is qualified teacher status, they can go on a 1 to 13 ratio. I think it's quite ludicrous to say that it wouldn't affect anything, because in a nursery we pride ourselves on having that personal care with children. So I know that each of my staff members has a personal relationship with each individual child. They know exactly how to handle them. They know exactly what their behaviour pointers are. When the room's getting a bit high, they know to calm it and bring it down. So I do believe if you add an extra child into that mix, it's easy to look at a logistic and say a number is only one extra, but when you actually have that in the physical being, for example, a staff member could be needing to do a nappy and a child could have hurt themselves, and then 2 children could then be having an altercation over a toy. If you're expecting that from one person, it's ridiculous. At home, we understand how hard it is as a single parent, and that is obviously spoken about a lot, and we reward our single parents. So I do believe that nursery workers are somehow overlooked in that sense, that we are not superheroes, we are just one people, and we can only do what one person can do. So roughly it's £58 for a full day. That ranges from 7:30 to 6. You do have cheaper options if you do 4 days or 5 full days. However, there is not an option to get any funding from the government until your child is 2 years old, and that funding is also income dependent. And again, when you turn 3, you only get 30 hours 3 if both parents are working. If you're a single parent, you may be entitled to the 30 hours. If not, you will get the 15 hours. Now, to kind of put that into perspective, that equates 15 hours is roughly 1 full day in nursery and a half day. So you can imagine how if you don't get any further help from the government, how that seems like nothing in the grand scheme of a week. So it can be quite hard for parents. I don't believe it will cut a cost. I think the government are well aware that nursery and early years is in a recruitment crisis at the moment. It is probably the hardest time for us to recruit staff and retain staff, because my staff are getting paid minimum wage for a job that is definitely above minimum wage. I understand people have a concept of nursery workers that in a sense we're glorified babysitters, but I completely disagree. The passion and care that my staff give to my children is worth more than what I can pay them. So by thinking that increasing the ratios and putting more pressure on the early years sector is going to have a relief for anyone, it's quite absurd. I think if anything, it's going to have a detrimental effect on the care that we at Kids Hours pride ourselves on giving. I think we've noticed now more so than ever that since lockdown we are seeing the effects they're having on children, especially the children that were born in lockdown or were young babies in the lockdown. We are now noticing that they are really quite behind, and understandably so. They was locked in and they wasn't able to experience the experiences that children should experience from a young age. We noticed it a lot in nursery. We actually have created a safe space called our Zen Den, which is our quiet area. That is a time for children to relax and have that time out, because some children are still struggling to cope with the high pressure of a nursery setting. Now, I know that seems ridiculous, thinking children are just in nursery, how could they find that stressful? But you're asking children who are used to just being at home with mums and dads to then come into a nursery setting where there's upwards of 10-15 children their age, and it's quite startling for an adult. So I don't understand why we don't believe it's startling for a child. And I personally think that trying to increase the ratios, you're going to have a bad effect on children and their development, even more so than what we're noticing. It's going to put a lot more pressure on staff and nurseries, and the early years is kind of already just staying afloat. I don't think we need anything to help us drown. I would say my parents who have children who we've already highlighted do have additional needs have expressed a concern, because obviously at the moment the funding that we get for additional needs isn't great. It doesn't equate to that much of one-to-one time. So I think then if you're going to increase our ratios, that means that our children who are already highlighted as being developmentally behind, we're not going to have that time to spend one-to-one with them. We're not going to have that time to be out of the room to do the necessary referrals we have to ensure they get their correct education. So I personally believe that if anything, we should be getting a bit more help from the government. And I completely understand the crisis for parents. I understand the cost of living. It's hard for all of us. And I don't agree that parents should have to be paying more. But then at the same time, I don't think it should be ignored that nurseries are struggling. Ideally, for me, you would make funding more applicable to everybody. I understand that's kind of a throwaway comment, and there's obviously logistics and funding that does go further into that. But for me, for parents to have to wait till a child's 2 to have to go back to work and then equally wait till they're 3, that's just having a worse effect on our economy, because if we can help these get back into work earlier and help them more with their childcare costs, then people can go back to work a lot earlier, and then that can also kind of help the economy grow, and then early years might get a bit more help that they need as well.
It makes me feel pretty uncomfortable as a practitioner, just because it's already can be difficult enough. You know, all children develop at different stages. So, for example, in my room, I work in the preschool room, that's a 1-to-8 ratio. At the minute, I have quite a lot of children in nappies still. You know, that's okay. Some children take a little bit longer, need a bit more time. At the minute, I'm already struggling to support those children when I'm in a 1-to-8 ratio. So if they were to relax it even further, that would mean taking time away from them even more. Ultimately, we need to make sure we're giving all children the best possible care we can do, and if we're relaxing the ratios even further, it's taking away that sort of like one-to-one time, that engagement time as well. So if we relax that, we're just, again, stripping the children of their quality of care. Speech and development at the minute, there's a lot of people that are on speech and language, communication. We've got a lot of children going down the neuro pathway as well, and there's just more and more children that need more and more support as well. You've got to remember, they've been at home, they've not had that social interaction, they've not had to share with other children, they've not had to communicate, they've not had to dress themselves or anything like that. They've had that constant one-on-one attention with their parents, and then coming here, they've got to learn to be independent, because that's all about what going to school is. It's about being independent, getting ready for school, and at the minute, they're not ready. I think there needs to be more funding within childcare. I think there needs to also be more one-on-one support for children that need it, and not just in special nurseries, special settings, but, you know, all nurseries desire that 1-to-1 ratio. We've got a lot of children that are under referral at the minute, so we could definitely need that ourselves.